The sun hung low over the dusty plains of West Texas like a weary lantern, casting long shadows across the weathered porch of the old Ramirez ranch. Elena Ramirez stood there, her calloused hands gripping the splintered railing, her dark eyes fixed on the horizon where a plume of dust announced the arrival of trouble. It was the third week of harvest failure, the second month of empty feed bins, and the endless tally of her father's debts that had finally caught up to them. At 28, Elena had become the backbone of the ranch, milking cows before dawn, mending fences under the relentless sun, and whispering prayers into the wind for a miracle that never came. But miracles, she knew, were for storybooks, not for daughters of stubborn old vaqueros like her father, Tomas, whose pride had mortgaged their future on one bad bet after another. The dust settled as the black stallion pulled up, its rider dismounting with the grace of a man born to the saddle. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his Stetson tipped low over eyes the color of storm clouds, and his boots, polished to a shine that mocked the Ramirez grit, sank into the parched earth. This was Jackson Hale, the richest rancher in 3 counties, owner of the sprawling Hale spreads that stretched like a green promise from the Rio Grande to the Pecos. Whispers in the saloon called him the debt collector, a man who foreclosed dreams with a signature and a handshake. Elena's heart hammered as he approached, his spurs jingling like chains. Tomas, frail and coughing from years of dust and regret, shuffled out the screen door behind her, his face a map of lines etched by too many yesterdays. "Mr. Ramirez." Jackson's voice was low, steady as the rumble of thunder, the notes come due. $5,000, plus interest. The bank's been patient, but patience has limits. He removed his hat, revealing sun-bleached hair and a scar that ran like a lightning bolt across his forehead, a mark from some wild rodeo long past, or so the tales went. Elena stepped forward, her chin lifted, though her knees trembled beneath her faded jeans. "We don't have it, Mr. Hale. The drought took the cattle, the hail the crops. Ha been sick." Tomas placed a shaking hand on her shoulder. "Elena, enough. This is man's business." But his voice cracked, betraying the lie. Jackson's gaze softened for a fraction of a second as it flicked to her, then back to the old man. "I ain't here to bury you in the dirt, Tomas. But land like this, it don't wait for rain that might never come." He pulled a folded paper from his vest, the foreclosure notice crisp and final. Elena's world tilted. She saw her childhood in flashes, the laughter around the supper table when Ma was alive, the way Pa taught her to rope a calf with a wink and a yarn about outsmarting coyotes. All of it, crumbling like dry adobe under the weight of ink on paper. That night, as the stars wheeled overhead like indifferent witnesses, Elena sat on the porch steps, a lantern flickering at her feet. Sleep was a stranger. The coyotes' howls mocked her vigil. Tomas had retreated to his bed, muttering apologies to ghosts, leaving her to wrestle the impossible. Sell the ranch? To who? When every neighbor was scraping by. Flee to the city, like her cousin Maria, trading saddles for skyscrapers and calluses for manicures. The thought soured her stomach. This land was in her blood, the red clay under her nails a testament to roots too deep to yank free. She buried her face in her hands, tears carving hot paths down her cheeks, when a soft whinny cut the silence. Jackson Hale, silhouetted against the moonlit barn, led his stallion from the shadows. He'd stayed, she realized, camped in the tack room like some errant guardian, or perhaps just a vulture waiting for dawn to pick the bones. Can't sleep either. His voice was gentler now, stripped of the boardroom bark. Elena wiped her eyes, straightening like a colt sensing a storm. "What do you want, Mr. Hale?" "To watch us break." He hesitated, then sat on the step below hers, the wood creaking under his weight. The proximity unnerved her, his scent of leather and sage, the warmth radiating from him like a hearth fire. "Call me Jack, and no, I don't want that. Truth is, I remember nights like this. My pa was a gambler too, lost our spread to a man much like me." Alina's breath caught. The debt collector, haunted. It didn't fit the legend. "What happened?" she asked, her voice a whisper. Jack stared into the lantern's flame, the light dancing shadows across his scarred face. "He drank himself gone one winter. Left Ma and me with nothing but a mule and a prayer. I swore I'd never be the fool who let pride eat him alive. Built Hale Ranch from nothing. Hired hands, bank loans, nights mendin' wire by headlamp. But every foreclosure, it carves a little more out of you, Elena. Makes you wonder if you're savin' land or just stealin' souls." The confession hung between them, raw and unexpected, like rain in the desert. For the first time, Elena saw not a monolith of wealth, but a man forged in the same fire of loss. She reached out, hesitantly, touching his shoulder. "Then why collect? Why not let folks like us breathe?" His eyes met hers, stormy depths holding secrets she'd only glimpsed. "Because breathin' ain't livin', and sometimes, to save a soul, you gotta pull it from the brink yourself." He stood then, offering a hand gloved in worn leather. "Come with me." The words were simple, but they landed like a lifeline tossed into churning waters. Elena stared at his palm, broad and steady, veins mapping a life of labor hidden beneath the rancher's veneer. Come with him, to what? Exile, servitude, a mercy marriage to salve his conscience. Her pulse raced, a wild mustang in her chest, but in that moment, with the stars bearing witness, she placed her hand in his, the warmth seeping through like dawn's first light. They rode out before sunrise, the stallion's hooves muffled on the dew-kissed grass. Elena clung to Jack's waist, the rhythm of the horse lulling her fears into a tentative truce. He didn't speak of debts or deeds, only pointed out constellations, Orion the hunter, her father's favorite tale, and the hidden springs where wild mustangs drank under the moon. By the time the sun crested the hills, they arrived at the edge of Hale Ranch, a sea of emerald pastures rolling toward a creek that sparkled like quicksilver. "This ain't what you think," Jack said, dismounting and helping her down. His touch lingered, a promise unspoken. They walked a fence line where workers, men and women with faces like her neighbors, etched by sun and struggle, tended herds of longhorns and fields of alfalfa that mocked the drought back home. Elena stopped at a corral, watching a young vaquero break a filly with gentle reins and murmured Spanish. "You teach kindness here," she said, more to herself than him. Jack nodded, leaning on the rail. "My ma did. Set a hand on the rope ain't about force, it's about trust. Land, horses, people, they all buck if you pull too hard." He turned to her then, his expression unreadable. "Tomas's debt, it ain't just numbers on a page. It's the weight he carries from losin' your ma young, from bets placed in grief." "I know, 'cause I placed mine after Pa." The revelation hit her like a sudden gust. Jack, not a predator, but a mirror, his empire built on the ashes of his own shattered home. "But you could wipe it clean," she pressed, her voice thick. "One signature, and we're free." He shook his head, a sad smile tugging his lips. "Freedom ain't given, Elena. It's earned. Come with me, not as a debtor's daughter, but as a partner. Help me run this place. Teach me what stubborn pride like your pa can teach a fool like me. And together, we'll turn that dry patch of Ramirez dirt into something green again." Her heart stuttered. Partner, not pity, not possession, but equality, a hand extended not to collect, but to build. Tears pricked her eyes, but she blinked them back, the profound realization dawning. Kindness wasn't the absence of hardship, but the choice to share its load. Days blurred into weeks as Elena straddled two worlds, the crumbling Ramirez porch and the thriving Hale Acres. She rode with Jack at dawn, learning the pulse of irrigation lines that snaked life into barren soil, the art of negotiating with banks not as foes, but as reluctant allies. Tomas grumbled at first, his pride a thorny vine, but when Jack arrived one evening with a truckload of seed and a vet for the ailing herd, the old man's resistance cracked. "Why?" Tomas rasped over coffee black as midnight. Jack met his gaze steadily. "Because I lost my way once, sir." A girl with fire in her eyes pulled me back. "Reckon it's time I return the favor." Elena, eavesdropping from the kitchen, felt a warmth bloom in her chest, unexpected and fierce. This man, who'd come as a storm, was weaving himself into their tapestry, thread by golden thread. But life on the edge of hope is a fickle rider, and trouble galloped in on the heels of a late-season norther. The wind howled like banshees, stripping leaves from the young sprouts Elena had coaxed from Ramirez soil with Jack's borrowed equipment. She raced through the gale, battening hatches and hauling tarps, her shouts lost to the roar. Tomas, defiant in his frailty, ventured out to secure the barn door, and collapsed in the mud, his cough turning to a rattle that chilled her blood. Jack found her there, cradling her father in the downpour, her cries a raw symphony against the thunder. "He's burnin' up," she sobbed, rain mingling with tears. Without a word, Jack scooped Tomas into his arms, carrying him to the truck like a father with his child, and floored it to the county clinic 20 miles away. The wait was agony, the fluorescent lights buzzing like accusations. Elena paced, her boots tracking mud across the linoleum, until Jack pulled her into the waiting room corner, his arms a bulwark against the storm within. "He'll pull through," he murmured, his breath warm against her temple. "Folks like Tomas, they're tougher than Texas granite." But doubt gnawed at her, the what-if's a chorus of shadows. What if this was the debt's final collection, lost disguised as wind? Hours stretched, then the doctor emerged, his face weary but kind. "Pneumonia, caught early, with rest and meds, he'll be rising hell again by spring." Relief crashed over her like the receding flood, and she turned to Jack, burying her face in his chest. "You came," she whispered. "In the rain, the mud, you came." He tilted her chin up, his eyes locking with hers, vulnerability stripped bare. "Always will, Elena. From the moment I rode up that drive, it wasn't the dead I saw. It was you, standin' tall, holdin' the line. You make me want to be better than the man who collects shadows." The words unlocked something profound in her, a realization that selflessness wasn't a solitary act, but a bridge between broken souls. In that sterile hallway, with the scent of antiseptic and rain-soaked wool, Jack Hill took her hand, not in possession, but in pledge. "Come with me," he said again, softer now, not to escape, but to claim what's ours. Spring arrived like a prodigal son, tentative at first with hesitant rains that greened the Ramirez fields inch by verdant inch. Elena and Jack worked side by side, their hands brushing in the furrows, their laughter echoing over the hum of tractors. Tomas, propped on the porch with a shotgun across his lap, more for show than threat, watched with a gruff approval, his cough fading like an old enemy's retreat. The debt. Jack had torn up the paper one starlit night, feeding it to the campfire's maw. "No more tallies," he'd declared. "From here, we count blessings." Neighbors gathered for the first harvest barbecue, hots of chili bubbling and guitars strumming corridos that wove tales of outlaws and lovers. Elena, in a simple sundress the color of prairie sky, stood with Jack's arm around her waist, surveying the bounty, a patchwork of Hale and Ramirez land stitched by sweat and serendipity. But the true turning came not in abundance, but in quiet reflection. One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the horizon in strokes of rose and gold, Elena found Jack by the creek, skipping stones with a boy's abandon. She sat beside him, her head on his shoulder, the water's murmur a lullaby. "I thought you were the end," she confessed, tracing the scar on his forehead with a fingertip. "The collector come to claim what little we had." He caught her hand, pressing it to his lips. "And I thought you were just another name on a ledger. But you showed me that debts ain't just paid in dollars. They're settled in hearts, in hands joined against the wind." She smiled, tears of joy glistening. In that moment, the emotional crest swelled, a wave of compassion that had started as a stranger's mercy and crested into a love profound, transformative. Jack had given more than land. He'd given her back her father, her home, her hope. And in return, she'd given him absolution, a chance to be the man his scars had tried to bury. As the stars emerged, one by one, Elena whispered, "Come with me," echoing his words back to him, a vow wrapped in twilight. They rose together, walking hand in hand toward the ranch house aglow with lantern light, Tomas's silhouette waving from the door. In the vastness of the Texas sky, where dreams could stretch as far as the eye could see, they build not just a legacy of acres, but of humanity's quiet power, the kind that forgives, that lifts, that turns strangers into family. And in every heartbeat, every shared glance, Elena knew, kindness was the richest currency, selflessness the truest wealth. It didn't erase the droughts or the debts, but it watered the soul, ensuring that even in the hardest ground, something beautiful could grow. The months that followed wove their lives tighter, like vines reclaiming a neglected trellis. Elena discovered facets of Jack she'd never imagined, the way he'd slip away at midnight to mend a neighbor's windmill without fanfare, or how his voice softened when reading old letters from his ma, yellowed pages filled with recipes for tamales and admonitions to love fierce, forgive faster. He, in turn, marveled at her resilience, the way she'd coax a balky engine to life with grease-smeared prayers or gather the ranch hands, children for stories of La Llorona under the pecan tree. Their partnership bloomed in the soil, too. Hybrid seeds from Jack's agronomist friends mingled with Tomas's heirloom varietals, yielding corn that stood tall against the summer scorch. Yet, humanity's power isn't without its tempests. Word of the forgiven debt spread like wildfire through the county grapevine, drawing envious eyes and sharper tongues. At the annual cattle auction in Lubbock, a rival rancher, slick as oil, with a ledger heart, cornered Jack amid the lowing herds and cigar smoke. "Heard you went soft on the Ramirez girl," he sneered, swirling bourbon in a tumbler. "Charity don't build empires, Hale. One slip, and your green empire turns to dust." Jack's jaw tightened, the old scar twitching, but Elena, at his side in a crisp white blouse, laid a hand on his arm. "Empires built on dust deserve to fall," she said evenly, her voice carrying like a clear bell. "Ours stands on trust." The man blanched, mumbling retreat, and as the gavel fell on their prize bull, Jack pulled her close, whispering, "You're my North Star, Elena. Don't ever forget." That night, back under the ranch's vast roof, they danced in the kitchen to Tomas's scratchy radio, waltzed steps on linoleum scarred by boots and time. The old man chuckled from his rocker, his eyes misty. "You too, like my Rosa and me, back when the world was wide and wild." Rosa, Elena's mother, gone a decade to cancer's cruel theft, hovered in the air like a benevolent ghost. Jack paused the dance, turning to Tomas. "Tell us about her, the real stories, not the polished ones." And so, over mugs of atole steaming with cinnamon, Tomas spun yarns. How Rosa had outshot him in a friendly contest, claiming his hat as trophy. How she'd planted the orchard that still bore peaches sweet as her laugh. With each tale, the room warmed, layers of grief peeling back to reveal the gold beneath. Elena realized then, in the flicker of candlelight, that compassion wasn't just giving, it was receiving, allowing old wounds to breathe and heal in the light of shared memory. Summer's heat peaked in a blaze that tested their fragile alliance with the land. The creek dwindled to a trickle, dust devils danced mocking jigs across the pastures, and whispers of another foreclosure wave slithered through the feed store. Elena woke one dawn to find Jack gone, his side of the bed cool, a note pinned to his pillow, riding to the river. Join if you dare, heart pounding, she saddled her mare, a gift from him, dappled gray and spirited, and tracked his trail to the dry riverbed, where he wrestled alone with a massive pump, sweat carving rivers down his back. What madness is this? She called, dismounting. He grinned through the grime. Madness called hope, were divin, a well, deep enough to tap the aquifer, bring water to Ramirez and Hale alike. The project became their odyssey, a profound realization unfolding in the Earth's unyielding embrace. Days blurred into a symphony of labor. Elena coordinating with engineers via crackling phone lines, Jack barking orders to a crew of locals grateful for work that paid in dignity, not just dollars. Blisters formed and burst, arguments flared like dry lightning, over budgets strained thin, over Tomas's insistence on old ways, clashing with new tech. One evening, as the drill bit groaned against stone, a cave-in trapped two hands in the shaft. Panic clawed at Elena's throat. She scrambled down the ladder, her lantern swinging wild, calling their names into the dark. Jack followed, his voice a steady anchor. Breathe easy, boys. We're comin'. Together, they shored the walls with timber and nerve, hauling the men to safety amid cheers and backslaps. In the aftermath, bruised and filthy, Elena collapsed against him. We almost lost them, she gasped. But we didn't, because we chose each other, chose this fight. The well struck true on a harvest moon night, water gushing forth like Earth's joyful sob, cool and clear. The crew whooped, Tomas fired his shotgun skyward in salute, and Elena, tears streaming, pulled Jack into a kiss that tasted of salt and triumph. It was the emotional climax they'd unknowingly built toward, an act of generosity not in grand gestures, but in relentless, selfless toil. Jack had come to collect a debt, but in taking her hand, he'd surrendered his own burdens, transforming scarcity into surplus, isolation into community. Neighbors arrived at dawn, jars in hand, to taste the miracle, and soon pipelines snaked across fences, quenching fields that had thirsted for generations. Fall painted the plains in amber and rust, a canvas of gratitude. Elena and Jack married in the orchard, under peaches heavy with promise, Tomas officiating with a voice steadier than it had been in years. Vows exchanged weren't flowery scripts, but plain truths. I promise to ride through storms with you, Jack said, his ring, simple gold from his ma's locket, sliding onto her finger. And I'll hold the rope when you falter, she replied, her heart full. The reception spilled into the yard, laughter mingling with the scent of barbecue and marigolds, a tapestry of faces from both ranches, Hale hands rubbing elbows with Ramirez kin, stories swapped like precious coins. As winter whispered at the door, Elena found herself with child, a secret shared in the quiet of dawn, Jack's joyous sunrise in his eyes. Our legacy, he murmured, hands splayed over the gentle swell. But the true legacy unfolded in ripples. The well's water birthed a co-op, farmers pooling resources under Elena's ledgers and Jack's vision, turning drought's despair into a network of resilience. Tomas, ever the storyteller, took to mentoring the young vaqueros, his tales now laced with lessons of mercy learned late but deep. In the hush of a Christmas Eve, snow dusting the cacti like improbable lace, the family gathered by the fire. Elena, round with anticipation, leaned into Jack, Tomas across from them, spinning a yarn of the rich cowboy and the fierce heart, who'd tamed not land, but loneliness. Laughter filled the room, warm as the blaze, and Elena felt the story's arc complete, not in endings, but in endless beginnings. The message lingered, heartwarming and true. In a world quick to tally losses, the power of humanity lies in the hands we extend, the debts we forgive, the hands we take in return. It whispers that kindness is the seed, selflessness the rain, and from such humble soil, hope blooms eternal, reminding us all that no debt is too deep, no drought too long, when one soul dares to say, "Come with me."